they're guys who've been doing what I'm doing for 25 years in different markets in the US. And so they've already dealt with a lot of the problems that I have. I think, when you're a small contractor, and at least the way I learned by making a lot of mistakes, right? And now I'm this big business, and I still learn from mistakes, but it costs a lot more money.
Hi everybody, Gavin Coyle here. I'm the Gaffer, back again for a great episode with Chris Tatge. And Chris is a very successful business owner, co-owner of Dynamic Construction and DC Materials. And I'm really excited to have a call with him today because he runs a very successful business, number one, that is not just location specific. What we can have a chat with Chris today is on the fact of how to scale a business and how process and culture and structure and management and all the good stuff for running a very successful company is not just location specific. It could be anywhere in the world. And Chris has all the secrets that I need to get out of him today. So welcome to the podcast, Chris. Great to have you.
Well, thanks for having me on, Gavin. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I left out one bit there, and I'm just looking at your LinkedIn profile. I currently serve on the National Framers Council Steering Committee as the past president and as a board member for the Structural Building Components Association. I had to read that part. I'm sorry.
That's all right. I'll take it.
So tell me, how did you get into construction, Chris? I think there might have been a family connection. Was there a family business or?
Yeah, it was. So I was 17 years old, kid who had just graduated high school, didn't do particularly well in school at all. I was working at a Pizza Hut the following summer as a prep cook. So I'd go in the morning and cut vegetables. My youth pastor was trying to save money and building his own house. So I volunteered to go over there and help put up siding. There was a contractor there who was also sort of helping out and donating his time, doing the siding. He noticed I was a hard worker and offered me a job. And so that was my first job in the trades, was a small general contractor doing, whatever he needed me to, siding, framing, learning trim, all those things. So it sort of fell into it.
Yeah, but I think a lot of the listeners will resonate with that story. I definitely resonate with it because similar to myself, I came out of school with no real blueprint of where to move next. And that's the beauty about construction. It doesn't have barriers to entry in terms of education or academic qualification. Well,
for me, I wasn't a good student, couldn't sit at a desk for hours and take notes or any of that stuff. But when I started framing, I was good at it, and I could learn it really fast, and I could learn it faster than anyone. So wow. I turned 18 that summer, and by the time I was 20 years old, I had 2 employees and a contract to frame 26 houses. Wow. So it was very natural for me.
Yeah, that really intrigues me because I think there's entrepreneurial qualities in people that you come across that may have struggled with school and the system, and then they create out of torture. I suppose they create their own system.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, like it's probably something that the school system still hasn't addressed. I think globally that there's really good, fantastic entrepreneur people that just think a different way.
Yeah, I agree. I think there's been a slow shift towards sort of understanding that kids learn different ways. There's different means and methods to get to the same end. But I think there's plenty of work to do there. So, absolutely.
Was there, not to get too personal or close to the bone, was there any dyslexia or any sort of learning difficulties on your side, or was it just I'm not doing this?
Nothing that was ever identified. It was just sort of
So I'm not saying
I've
you need to
always heard.
identify it now. No,
What's that?
I'm not saying you need to identify it now. Or you need,
If you can, if there's anything out there, I'm open. I'm open to learning and improving. So
no, what intrigues me is I've often come across a lot of people in certain industries that might have a different way of thinking and learning. Like what springs to mind is architects seem to have more of a sort of not so much dyslexia, but the way they think of detail is totally completely off the norm, and they tend to have some sort of labeled issues. Accountants have come to mind as well, where autism or a certain level of autism or Asperger's and stuff like that. And I've
yeah,
seen industries where those personality traits flourish. So
it's isn't it? I was just having that conversation last night that when I think of accountants, and specifically accountants, it always reminds me there's sort of when I think about new business ideas, I get excited and I feel satisfied with sort of implementing some of these ideas or moving towards those ideas. And there are people out there who feel that same amount of satisfaction when they put the numbers in the right place.
yeah,
And that's super interesting.
you can see them. I don't really get the same excitement you're getting. But yeah, if it does it for you, it's all yours.
Absolutely.
But isn't that brilliant? Leads me on to a great subject with yourself is
Sure.
the power of having focused people that are passionate about what they do.
Yeah. Yeah. For me, I was good at framing right away, and I was better than at least anyone my age at the time, 20 years old, 21 years old. And I guess you talk about what you're good at and what's driven my business. I like being good at framing, and I like being the best framer, right? And sort of my evolution was, at least in my market, I'm in South Central Wisconsin, in the U.S. And for a framing contractor, a guy wearing a tool belt every day, the sort of the pinnacle of success was building large apartment buildings and with 20 or 30 employees, wearing a tool belt every day and keeping the money that was left over after that project's done, right? Having your own company and doing that. But what I found was my success, my make or break on profit really didn't rely on me and my guys as much as it was intertwined with if I had a lumber salesman who was interested in making sure I had a successful project. So whether or not I got the 2x4 I needed when I needed it, or whether or not I had enough subfloor sheeting, or if my roof trusses came on time, right? Those were really the factors that determined whether or not I was successful on the labor side. And I spent a lot of years trying to make sure that went well, and I couldn't. I couldn't until I figured out that I would get the service I wanted if I was the guy writing the check. So if I was paying for the lumber, if I was paying for the roof trusses, if I was paying for the wall panels, they would do whatever I asked. In 2014, I get involved with the National Framers Council. And I meet these guys from the Mid-Atlantic and a gentleman named George Hull from Dallas, Texas. And these guys are like professional businessmen, and they're also framers. So what was the difference? The difference was these guys were buying and selling their own lumber. And what George said to me, and George frames 12 million square feet a year, generally regarded as the most successful guy in our industry. He said, Chris, those lumber guys, they mess up the takeoff, and I've got to figure out how much material I need. So I'm doing the work. I might as well be making some money on it. And I thought, you know what? I've been doing that for 20 years. I've been figuring out how much material I need, and I haven't made any money off of that. And so that was really, for me, I thought, I have to learn more about the lumber industry. I have to figure out how to work myself into the supply chain and start doing full labor and material packages.
Yeah.
And that was the turning point. Absolutely.
Yeah, because as you're talking, I was thinking to myself, it sounds so simple, the way you've put it, but if the individual is, and a lot of these individuals are happy to be individual contractors, so I suggest, and maybe you might tell me something different, but a lot of these guys will be independent business owners themselves, but they're not really business owners, they're more independent freelance contractors.
Yeah. Yep.
And, they're not the ones that want to be going home, going through all the receipts and the requisitions and the invoices and having to tot all that up.
Yeah.
So you really became like a project management framing company first.
Yeah.
Would that be a fair analogy of it?
Yeah.
So look, let me handle project management. Project management is what? Administration, labor sourcing, procurement, safety, quality, environmental, and you go and execute, and I'll make all the pathways clear for you, so you can be a success for me.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yep. That's well put.
Thank you. Have you got a job? No, I know, but what the listeners don't probably appreciate is, could you give us a sense of the size of your business today and the type of organization that it is today, from that 2-person, I think you said when you started off first, it was two people?
Yeah. So I was sort of, when I was a labor-only guy, 2017, 2018, running, 20 carpenters, and doing one project at a time. We sold our first lumber package in 2019. Since then, we've grown 1,126%. We were named 539th fastest growing company in America by Inc. magazine last year. So this year, we'll frame 1.3 million square feet. And at our busiest time, we'll be running about 130 carpenters.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
So wow, well done. That's putting the hairs on the back of my neck in terms of like such a short space of time, Chris. That's phenomenal growth. It's a wonder you didn't. It's a wonder you haven't sold the business at this stage with the growth that's bringing. I'm sure there's been plenty of people knocking on the door and going, "Hey, Chris."
There's opportunities, and there's you catch people's attention, and they want to know what you've got going on over there.
But is it a simple success? Is different, has a different meaning to everybody. So success in your freelancer, contractor, carpenter is winning a contract with your company and then having enough work in front of them so that they know that they can put food on the table and have a nice lifestyle. That's success probably for them.
Oh yeah. And that's a good life. I mean, and to be honest with you, I said I loved framing. I've always loved it. I love the industry. And if my body would hold up, I'd be wearing a tool belt and I'd be banging out walls. I loved it that much. I'm building a cabin for myself. I've been building a cabin for myself for 2 years. Every other weekend, I drive 4 hours north and I wear my tool belt again. And it's just the most peaceful, serene. I listen to loud music and I get to be a carpenter again.
Yeah, so it comes across to Chris, definitely from the conversations me and you have had. As I said to you earlier on, whatever happened to the framing guy? It's like, you stuck in my mind the last time we spoke. It's like, Jesus, it's. I love people that are singularly focused on a topic that they're passionate and motivated and they're engrossed in, and they're not getting caught up with this. Like, I'm sure maybe you can speak to us about people trying to drag you into different areas of different parts of the construction process because they have the relationship with you. And maybe you might talk to us about that.
Yeah, I mean, when you catch everyone's attention, right? Their opportunities abound, and you sort of have this. You've got this thing, and it's profitable, and you're doing really well, and the sky's the limit. And so, yeah, there's people come calling. You sort of have to pick the things that you want to do, right? So, do you want to expand into a new market? Do you want to get it? For us, there's opportunities to get into mass timber. There's opportunities to expand our business. There's opportunities to bring on different products for sale. And, well, first of all, I've got a great business partner. So his name's Eli Brotzman, and I'm sort of the guy. He says I have magic beans. I'm always selling magic beans. So I have these very high ideas, and he reels me in. So, he asks the important questions. But for us, what it really always comes down to is, and this sounds a little bit cheesy and a little bit sort of, everyone says this kind of thing, but for us, it's a service thing. If we deliver a 4-story building, no matter what size, in 8 weeks, every time, right? So that's essential to our business, that we can service our general contractor, the framers that decide to partner with us and help us build these buildings, our vendors. We make sure that all of them have what they need from us to be successful. And the question is always, if we get into the new thing, can we keep up that same level of service, that same expectation? We can hit those goals. If the answer is no, then we just don't do it.
Yeah. And how does that no come about? Is there a risk matrix conversation, or how do you?
That's the conversation with Eli.
Come back here, Chris. That's the risk matrix.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Know your place.
Yeah. Know your place and just
stay in your lane.
Yeah, stay in your lane. Absolutely, stay in your lane. It's important, but also, I think a sort of way to balance that out is don't be limited by what you see happening in your market.
Yeah.
So, an important message that I try to get out there through the Framers Council is, I spent 20 years wearing a tool belt and swinging a hammer. I loved every minute of it, but I had sort of these blinders on because in my market, framers didn't buy and sell lumber. I didn't see opportunities because I was limited by sort of what was around me as far as my ability to envision what's out there, right? So if you're kind of if you're a contractor and you're the guy with the truck who's showing up every day, and you eventually want to move beyond that, or you're starting to think like I started to think, like my body can't do this much longer. What's my plan now?
Yeah.
Looking outside of your market and trying to connect with people who do what you do and who have done it more successfully or do it in a way that you think you might want to do. Try to find those individuals and have those conversations.
But I think being authentic. I don't think people talk enough about being true to yourself and being authentic to the way that your business is run, rather than trying to import a generic model because it's worked for somebody else. Doesn't mean to say it's going to work for you. Right? Would that be fair?
Yeah, absolutely. Being able to reconcile all those things against reality.
Yeah.
Is a key part of the process.
Well, even for my own businesses, and it's a health and safety business in the background, we've been approached more times to provide, project managers. Can you provide supervisors? No. It's hard enough to deal with what your real core focus is, without having to go into these, and it's very easy to be pulled and led into, oh, look, there's gold over here. It's nice and shiny. It's true though, isn't it? Like,
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely.
Like, and before you know it, you're committed, and then all of a sudden the real conversations start by, well, here, hold on a minute. You said you could deliver this, and now you're not focused on what you're good at or what your scale was.
Yeah. 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 You have to be able to do what you say you're going to do. You also have to not say that you can do something that you can't do.
Yeah. So with that, you've stuck to your core blueprint from day one, basically. So you didn't decide to open up your own lumber yard or merchant, or you didn't decide to get into software or some sort of innovative tech and creative project that, you know, you're the smartest guy in the room because you came up with this idea because you know better.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Sticking with what you know and doing it really, really well has helped our business. But I will say this: I am opening up a lumber yard.
Yeah, but only after you have the luxury of creating your own little playground, which is a big difference.
I mean, put the systems in place, the means and methods, the management necessary to make sure things are running the way they're supposed to be running, and understanding that my time is managed in a way that I can give my attention to the new endeavor. Right.
Yeah.
So absolutely.
So looking back on, you know, knowing what you know now, what would you have done different if you had to go back to 2017, 2018, up to today in regards to the business journey? Is there something that you know now that you know it, you say to yourself, I'll never do that again?
Yeah.
Curveball. Sorry.
No, that's okay. It's an interesting question. I think the way that and this, maybe it's a little bit in the weeds, but the way I approached the supply chain, I was pretty naive, and I was a little bit arrogant. I think I was this sort of framer who had brought a new thing to my market, and I was standing up on a soapbox and letting everyone know I had this new great thing. And the other people that I was disrupting in the supply chain were not happy about it.
Wow. Yeah.
And I got a lot of pushback, and some of the people who were willing to sell me at the wholesale level decided that they were not willing to sell me because the people I was competing with had a lot bigger carrot, right?
Yeah.
So,
but you were brave.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say, like, if you didn't make that change and become that maverick, you wouldn't be where you are today. So, like,
absolutely, and I'm very glad I did.
Yeah, but it is interesting that you recognize that maybe you were cocky and arrogant. Yeah, absolutely. You know. So knowing what I know now, I'm not going to be cocky and arrogant.
Yeah. So it's supply chain management and understanding that when you're disrupting an industry, there are people who are going to be disrupted, and they're not going to be happy about it. I think disruption is a buzzword in construction right now, and people want to be disruptors. Be cognizant of the people you're disrupting, and be cognizant of the power they have, right?
Yeah, they have skin in the game. They've got currency in the model. Yeah. And they've got the years and the scratches in the back that go with it. But it was a very smart move, I thought, as well, for you to position yourself on the Framers Association as well, and that you were open-minded enough to go through collaboration. There's probably a success here as well, that it's not just me coming up with this innovative model, creative, disruptive model, but I'm willing to share that as an open source, maybe? Because I'm sure everybody said, well, why are you doing it that way? We've always done it this way, Chris.
Yeah, absolutely. The relationships that I have with my peers through the National Framers Council are invaluable. There are guys who've been doing what I'm doing for 25 years in different markets in the U.S. And so they've already dealt with a lot of the problems that I have. I think, when you're a small contractor, and at least the way I learned by making a lot of mistakes.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And now I'm this big business, and I still learn from mistakes, but it costs a lot more money. And I'd much rather hear about the mistakes my colleagues have made years ago and head them off.
Yeah. So I used to be part of an organization called Entrepreneurs Organization. I don't know if you heard of it before, EO. It's a global thing, and you had to go to a forum once a month with like-minded business owners of all different backgrounds. And you shared your personal journey for the previous month and your professional journey.
Yeah, I'm a member of the Young Presidents Organization, so it's very similar. Young Presidents Organization. So we have monthly forum, peer group. YPO. Yeah. Yep. And it's an amazing tool.
It's just a funny story, but you nearly some of the recent, you come out of meetings, you go, I thought I had a bad month. That after listening to some of the guys, and I actually feel better about myself having gone to that meeting because I'm not doing as bad as the other guy or whatever.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, 100%. And just yeah. So I mean, and that's my forum is with just, I'm sure like yours, it's people that are outside of my industry, but there's so much alignment, right, with sort of business ownership and growth. Peer-to-peer
stuff is very powerful, and I don't think construction does enough of that. I think it's a very siloed type industry across the globe. Where
Which if you're willing to be
vulnerable
and a little bit different, right? And in construction, it's not hard to stand out from the crowd. You can be a dwarf amongst midgets. You just you just try a little something different, and you it's a lot easier path to success.
Yeah, but it does go back to time. And I think it's probably underestimated as it's the most valuable thing that anyone could give to anybody, is to afford yourself that time to take your head out of the business and actually spend maybe a day with these like-minded individuals. And people think, oh no, I haven't got time, I have to get on with the job, blah blah blah. Just make that time for a couple of hours. It could be even at the weekend or whatever, just take your head out of the game. That doesn't, you don't have to be a business owner to have, I don't believe you have to be a business owner. Maybe you can tell us the difference, but it could be the carpenter that works for you, just to sort of sit back and go, like, where am I at? And,
exercising that muscle of sort of self-reflection.
Yeah.
It's, if you're taking that time, and you're, for me, it's, monthly for a day, one day every month. And then it's exercising the muscle so that muscle's there when you need it, and finding out about a new opportunity and being able to reflect and be honest about the situation you're in, and how that opportunity might really work out.
Yeah. I'd be interested to share, if you could, and it's open to yourself whether there's something there or not, but do you have some sort of a coaching policy with the contractors that you bring on board in order to help them to be a success within their own right, rather than just be a time and labor model?
Yeah, I don't have anything formal, but my demeanor and my approach very much is come to me with questions, and beyond that, I check in with these guys. How are you doing? How's your business going? I try to present myself as a mentor and a resource. And I spend a lot of time doing a lot of free work for the National Framers Council.
Okay.
And in terms of putting myself out there as a resource nationally for framing contractors, call me. I posted on LinkedIn a few weeks ago. I posted my phone number. I'm driving for the next 4 hours. Call me if you want advice from a framer.
That's brilliant. That is great. That is brilliant.
And it was a 4-hour drive again up to my cabin, and I spent 3.5 hours talking to people. And they learned, and I also learned.
That's brilliant. I love that. Yeah. That's the first time I've heard that. That is a brilliant idea.
It was a fun experiment. It's very successful from my perspective.
Yeah, but it's non-transactional.
Yeah, it's yeah.
Do you know what I mean? There's no bias. There's no set agenda.
Yeah.
Let's have a discussion, and I think one of the themes that has definitely come out of our podcast is the industry is fragmented, and there's not much collaboration going on in general across the board. And do you see that yourself where you guys are?
Absolutely. I mean, you kind of get into what's the future of construction? Where does it go? Where does it need to go? All the inefficiencies people have been talking about for 6 years now. It's shifting the attitude from sort of this, I think, a tendency to be an arrogant contractor who thinks they've got their business figured out, to somebody who's willing to have conversations, work, put in the time ahead of time.
Yeah.
It's important. It's where we need to go if we're going to actually successfully build the housing that at least the U.S. needs.
Yeah. And by the way, Europe has a housing crisis as well. So we're all singing on the same. And the shortage of labour and skilled labour, the lack of people that are coming into the construction industry as a career. Is there anything that you guys are doing, anything in your part of the world to try and sort of look at and address the shortage of labour in the market?
Well, there's kind of two factors there. There's getting kids interested in it early on, and sort of removing the idea that if you don't go to college, you're not going to be successful, right? I think we as a society are moving that direction. I think there's a lot of those conversations, and that attitude is changing. So that's a good thing. I think guys like me need to be getting into classrooms more often and talking to kids and being honest about the opportunities that are out there with construction. The other part of it is of course, and it's a hot button thing, right? The immigration debate in America and the way it's tossed around as a political football. And I think it's unfortunate the way that immigration has been politicized in our country, because I think there's a lot of opportunity for America to do really well by sort of embracing the opportunities immigration presents. So it's an unfortunate state there. And I work with a lot of immigrant labor. I work with a lot of guys who work really hard and are really interested in raising families and providing and making a home for themselves. And it's great to see. And I love to see those guys succeed. And I just, I that's the story, right? I think that's the story for immigration in America, that I think that's where the narrative needs to be. But, that's way above my pay grade.
Well, as an Irishman, obviously, the Irish-US connection has always been there, and we flourished on the back of being able to be supported by your country. So there's a success blueprint already there in terms of the amount of Irish generational growth and success, and where that is today, and that's it's not as if it hasn't been successful before, I suppose, what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. It's an established model.
So in terms of your aspirations then to grow the business, do you want to sort of, let's look at the bigger picture and the future of where you're going. Like, do you want to grow this into just a massive powerhouse, or what is your growth plans?
Yeah, I like the Wisconsin market. I'm planning on staying in the Wisconsin market. I don't want to branch out too much from there. I want to get up more market share. I sort of had this revenue goal that I wanted to hit, and then I thought, I'll plateau, and I hit it, and I want to grow more. So
yeah.
I think continuing to do what we do and do it really well. I like being able to be a little bit picky about the jobs that we take and the general contractors we partner with.
Yeah.
And so we intend to grow. We intend to continue to grow. With it in the background, can we continue to have successful projects as we grow? Big picture for me looks, you said earlier, success looks different for different people, right? Mm-hmm. So I spend a lot of time with the National Framers Council, talking to framers from across the country. I spend a lot of time on the Structural Building Components Association. So that's the association that governs wood, roof and floor trusses and wall panels in North America. I think there's a lot of opportunities for framing contractors out there if they want them to grow their businesses, to professionalize our industry a little bit more, to get a seat at the table early on.
Yeah.
I think to be a good framer, you've got to understand concrete foundations. You've got to understand electrical. You've got to understand plumbing, HVAC. You've got to understand all the different trades that touch your work, right?
Yeah.
And so we sort of have this built-in skill set that lends itself really, really well to pre-construction planning. But for some reason, framers aren't engaged early on.
Yeah.
And I think getting the message out that there are guys out there like me who can engage and work on a professional level early on, and getting those guys into those opportunities and just doing right by my industry, that's really my definition of success. I want to continue to sort of lead as an example of what framers can be, and show what we can give back to the process. So
it kind of, if you don't mind me saying so, and I don't want to put this words in your mouth, but it kind of sounds like you want to do some sort of a mentoring type academy type model, where you can say to people, if you're motivated, committed, honest, vulnerable and ready, come back to Chris and we're going to actually work with you, because if you're a success, it doesn't matter that you're in the same industry as me, but then you're going to start growing the success of the framing industry in the States worldwide, or sorry, in countrywide. Yeah. And it sounds very much like as if you're trying to float all the boats.
Yeah, that's very much my interest.
Yeah.
I'm thrilled to be a resource to guys out there that I spent 20 years, working hard with no idea like what I could be. And,
Yeah.
and so I learned a lot from the mentors that I had. I'm
Yeah.
happy to be a mentor to the other guys
And give it back. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, whether your co-founder agrees with you, that's another conversation.
He does. No, he does. It's great. He's on board with that. I'm very lucky in that way that my business partner sort of understands me, understands what I want to do, and understands the work that I do. That, to be honest, doesn't really. I learn a lot, but there's not really a direct. It doesn't show up on a balance sheet really well, right? So. I was in Canada yesterday. I was in Montreal, at the Montreal Wood Convention. Very unusual. I was the only framer there. There's 1,000 lumber guys. So there's not really a direct, business connection. I learned a lot, and I learned how to buy lumber a little bit better, but being able to spend time learning about the industries adjacent to me, so that I can improve my industry and
it's a parallel industry.
Yeah.
There's no reason why there couldn't be cross fertilization of knowledge.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that's interesting. So in terms of risks, we've already dealt with the famous pandemic or infamous pandemic, whichever way you want to look at it.
Sure.
We've dealt with as leaders, you've dealt with obviously conflict. You've dealt with obviously political scenarios. These are all stuff that's out of your control. So, what would you say to people listening to the podcast that you have as a yardstick measure to try and prepare yourself for the next downturn, change in price of products and materials, pandemic? Like, how do you gear yourself up for crisis management?
Oh,
that's a curveball. Sorry about that. Loaded question.
No, that's okay. How do I make sure that I'm set up to manage risk well and properly? There's one of the ways is, there's going to be hard times eventually. Doing what I do and doing it better than everyone else around me is a nice buffer for that, right? I sell a commodity. I sell lumber, and in commodities, the lowest price wins every time. So making sure that my operation is efficient enough that when it is tight, I do have the lowest price is very important. It's a little bit into the weeds, but on the price risk management side of lumber, I trade lumber futures contracts, and that helps manage price risk. I also understand very clearly how I can work with my vendors and pay them a little more so that they own or are willing to own price risk. So if I can buy a 2x4 for $4 on the cash market, right now, and there's a vendor who's willing to sell me a 2x4 for $4.20 6 months from now, I'm usually going to buy it for $4.20 and let them own the risk.
Yeah, it's kind of the aviation model nearly of buying fuel, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah, you're hedging. You're basically hedging. Which is a great takeaway for, like, even the small people, sort of small business owners that we have listening to the podcast, construction owners. Mm-hmm. There's, like, you're on a macro scale. Yeah. But really what you're talking about is relationships.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, keeping close to the supply chain. Open dialogue, communication, trust, honor.
Yeah.
Integrity.
Absolutely. We, lumber in 2020, lumber went up and was 5 times more expensive than it was
Well,
in
yes.
2019.
Yeah.
And lumber at its core is a relationship business. So that was daily phone calls with my vendors about what was going on in the market and what I could buy at, and then calling my customers to tell them what I could sell at that day. If I didn't have those relationships with my vendors in place,
Yeah.
where and at that time, there were things you just could not get.
Yeah.
You couldn't get subfloor sheeting unless you knew somebody.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. It was 100% the same in Europe. Insulation, for example, the timber was definitely a big hit, and then insulation was just like, it was like as if it was gold.
yeah.
But like, it just goes to show you, no matter how much you document and try and prepare yourself for every eventuality, there's always stuff that's going to come up that nobody expected. Or there's always that potential.
Yeah.
So really what you were saying earlier on in terms of managing risk is, and I'm not saying put words in your mouth, but like, how do you create buffer systems within your model so that the road isn't as you don't drop as low as your nearest competitor?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I think it's understanding where your risks are, what your risks are, and getting a very clear idea of those things and building up around that. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep.
I'm going to throw a few more curveballs at you if you don't mind, because this is what I like to do. And for anyone listening, we didn't prepare any of this, but a couple of random questions, I suppose. I think I sent you a few of them.
Yeah.
So, your favorite holiday destination and why?
It's right here behind me. Helsinki,
Beautiful.
Finland. My wife was born and raised and grew up and spent most of her life in Finland. She's a Finnish citizen, and so we love to go back and see family and everybody. So it's a beautiful city. It's a great country with great people.
Yeah, I'm just thinking of the story of one of our contractors. Was we were sending to a project in Finland, and it was a wind energy project.
Yeah.
And the only reason he wanted to take the contract, and he said no one else is to take this contract, only me, was because he wanted to see a moose.
Seeing a moose in the wild is one thing. Seeing a moose on the highway is not.
That's not good. That's not good. No. But he sent me a picture one snowy morning at like 7:00 in the morning, and there, as he was going up a trail in his 4x4, standing in front of him was his moose moment.
That's fantastic.
Okay, favorite book. It doesn't have to be business, but a favorite book and why?
The Old Man and the Sea by Ernest Hemingway. I just have so much admiration for the old man. The way that Hemingway describes the wrinkles in his face and his hands, and how his hands are so calloused and hard from the work he's done his entire life. And there's a simplicity to him, and there's a grit that I really admire. And so, I love that book. It gives me perspective every time. And Hemingway, the way he writes, it speaks to me. So, yeah.
Yeah. I definitely could see the passion in your eyes when you were saying that one. Definitely. Favorite car? Favorite car and why? Favorite car and why?
1967 Ford Mustang.
Oh, there we go. Why wouldn't it be?
Red coupe with the original 289. And I'll tell you why. That's an easy one. I'm a 16-year-old kid, and I'm working at Pizza Hut. And my father comes home and says, "Hey, what kind of car payment do you think you could afford?" Right? And on his drive home, there was a 1967 Ford Mustang on the side of the road, completely restored for $5,300. I mean,
Go on.
somebody needed some fast cash, and my dad saw it an hour after they put it out on. So,
that's brilliant.
Yeah. So here I am, this 16-year-old kid taking a loan out for this beautiful, absolutely beautiful car. Had really no business driving it at all. And again, in my the foolishness of my youth, about a year later, I could sell this car and make a profit.
Oh no!
So it was short lived, but at least
Now I know why you're so good at hedging on your lumber. Something random about you that nobody else would even know, or very few people in the world know about Chris Tatge.
Something random about me.
Yeah, or unique, or something that not many people would identify you with, or that would be aware of, whether it's a personality trait or something that happened to you in the past, or something that is, something about you that we wouldn't know.
It's framing related. At least it's interesting. And I don't know if it's in 2017. OSHA does a campaign every year. What's it called? They do a fall protection campaign every year where they sort of put it out there and want to promote fall protection for 1 week. In 2017, I was the poster guy for their OSHA annual fall protection, and so I'm the guy on the 2017 poster. I was at the little bottom of every single email that OSHA sent out all year, and I was on 1,700 billboards across America.
Wow, that's brilliant.
Yeah.
That's my husband. That's my dad. That's my dad. Oh my god. So did you get did Armani call you, or did you get any sort of modeling gigs out of that?
No modeling gigs, and you wouldn't imagine the number of releases you have to sign to be in that position for a government campaign.
That's one of the best ones I've heard so far. That's brilliant. You're on billboards all over the country with your tool belt. I tell you what, it doesn't get any better than that in terms of somebody that is completely engrossed in their own industry, that they're willing to go out and become a model as well for the industry. Huh? You're going to get ripped after this podcast. I'm sorry about that, Chris. But if they didn't know him before, they definitely will know after this. Chris, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on our podcast, and I'm so delighted that you took time out of your own schedule to help give back to the community of construction, regardless of where you were. I think you've been very honest, and you've been very forthright and open, and it's an absolute pleasure. But a credit to you and your co-founder for, I'll call you a trailblazer. Yeah, that's a kind of a loose terminology, but the ingenuity of seeing that there was a better way of doing business. That's my biggest takeaway from today's call with yourself, apart from obviously the leadership and the culture and the people side of things, but to sit back and sort of look at it and say, no, there's a better way of doing this. I think that's a hats off moment for you. So I really appreciate your time.
Thank you for the platform. I appreciate you having me on. So it's been a great discussion, a lot of fun. So, and
considering you put that post on LinkedIn, if someone wanted to reach out to you just in a general context, and I don't want you to get flooded with
I'm very active. I'm very active on LinkedIn. I'm always happy to talk. Send me a message. My contact information is pretty available if you type my name into any search engine. So,
Yep. Yeah, and I wish you the best, Chris, and thank you very much for joining us. And we'll talk again in the future, I'm sure.
Yeah. Thank you for having me.